The great chamber of Concordia Prime stretched so high that clouds formed near its ceiling. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of a circular floor made of glass, beneath which stars swirled in endless patterns. Around her, rising in 12 tiers of stone and metal, sat the representatives of the Galactic Council. Each species occupied their own section, designed to suit their unique biology. The ethereal Velthari floated in chambers of pure light. The massive bronze sat on platforms that groaned under their weight. The insectoid Krevtar hung from crystalline webs that sparkled in the artificial sunlight. Sarah felt small in this place. She always had. But today that feeling pressed down on her shoulders like a physical weight. Today was the day of judgment. The council will now hear final statements before the vote, Speaker Velshara announced. Her voice echoed through translation devices, rendered into 1,000 languages simultaneously. She was Velthari, a being of pure energy contained within a vaguely humanoid form that glowed with soft purple light. To Sarah, she had always seemed cold, distant, as if humanity was beneath her notice. Sarah stepped forward. Her footsteps on the glass floor seemed too loud in the sudden silence. Behind her, Admiral Marcus Webb stood rigid in his dress uniform, his weathered face showing no emotion. But Sarah knew him well enough to see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands clenched behind his back. "Honored council members," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "Humanity stands before you accused of aggression, of expanding too quickly, of refusing to abandon our nature. We are called dangerous, uncivilized, a threat to galactic peace." She paused, looking up at the 12 species that held Earth's fate in their hands. Some looked back with curiosity, others with obvious disgust. The Felshan, who resembled upright lizards with feathered crests, hissed softly among themselves. The crystalline shard simply pulsed with colors Sarah had learned meant disapproval. "I will not deny our history," Sarah continued. "We come from a world that was not kind to us. We fought for survival for millions of years. We built our civilization through struggle, through competition, through conflict. Yes, we have known war. We have known violence. But we have also known love, cooperation, art, and the desire to reach beyond ourselves." She activated the holographic display built into the floor. Images sprang to life around her. Human cities gleaming in the sun, children of a dozen worlds playing together in parks on Mars and Europa and New Terra. Scientists working side by side with Krevtar researchers. Human doctors treating wounded aliens after the plague of Sector 7. In the 2 centuries since we joined the galactic community, we have never started a war. Every conflict we engaged in was defensive, protecting our people or our allies. We have shared our medical advances freely. Our artists have contributed to the cultural database. Our engineers have helped build stations in 3 sectors. We have tried, honored council, to be good neighbors. You have tried, Velshara said, her voice cutting through Sarah's speech like a blade of ice. And yet your military grows every year. Your weapons become more sophisticated. Your colonies spread like a virus across space. You refuse to limit your reproduction. You refuse to adopt the philosophy of eternal peace. You experiment with technologies we have deemed too dangerous. You are humans, Ambassador Chen, and humans cannot help but be what they are. Aggressive, expansionist, dangerous. Sarah felt anger flash through her chest, hot and fierce. She pushed it down, forced her voice to remain calm. We grow our military because we live in a dangerous galaxy. The marauders of the void still raid outer colonies. Pirates operate in every sector. We protect what is ours as is our right. As for expansion, we have only settled worlds that were unclaimed, that fell within the boundaries established by council law. We have broken no covenant. You break the spirit of the law with every breath, said Gormath, the Braun representative. He was massive, 3 times Sarah's height, with gray skin like stone and eyes that glowed a dull red. You breed like rodents. Your population quadruples every century. Soon you will outnumber all council species combined. You consume resources at an alarming rate. You change everything you touch. You are a young species, too young to have learned wisdom, too proud to accept guidance. We accept guidance when it is offered in good faith. Sarah shot back, unable to contain herself completely. But we will not accept being told we must limit how many children we can have. We will not accept technology restrictions that keep us dependent on council infrastructure. We will not accept a philosophy that demands we become something we are not. And there is the truth at last, Velshara said, and Sarah heard something like satisfaction in her voice. Humanity refuses to evolve beyond its primitive nature. You cling to your aggression, your independence, your chaos. The Council has maintained peace for 10,000 years by following certain principles. All species must adapt to the greater good. You refuse, therefore you cannot remain. Sarah's heart sank. The vote had not even been taken yet, but she could hear the finality in Velshara's voice. This was not a trial, it was a sentencing. The decision had been made long before Sarah walked into this chamber. I asked the Council to remember, Sarah said, and she heard the desperation creeping into her voice now, that humanity has been a net positive to the galactic community. We have contributed. We have cooperated. We have saved lives. Is there no room in this galaxy for a species that does things differently? Must we all think the same, act the same, believe the same? What kind of diversity is that? There is a difference between diversity and danger, said the Shard representative, its crystalline body chiming with each word. Your species has potential for great violence. We have seen your history. We have watched your entertainment, which glorifies conflict. We have studied your psychology. You are a species born from predators, shaped by competition, driven by ambition. Place that in a confined galaxy with limited resources, and eventually, inevitably, you will turn that violence outward. We are more than our history, Sarah almost shouted. Every species here evolved from something violent. The Braun were warlords before they found peace. The Felshan hunted each other in ritual combat for thousands of years. The Krevtar were cannibals. Every species had to overcome their nature. Why do you believe we cannot do the same? Because, Velshara said softly, you do not wish to. Silence fell across the chamber. Sarah realized in that moment that nothing she said would matter. The Council had decided humanity was too different, too unpredictable, too dangerous to their ordered, peaceful galaxy. They would remove the chaos before it could spread. The Council will now vote, Velshara announced. The question: should humanity be exiled from Council space, all trade agreements terminated, all diplomatic relations severed, all joint projects dissolved? You have 10 seconds to register your vote. Sarah watched as lights appeared above each of the 12 sections. Red for yes, blue for no. The lights appeared one by one, each feeling like a nail in humanity's coffin. Red, red, red. The Velthari, the Braun, the Shard, red, 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 the Felshan, the Monolith, the Singers, red, 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 the Collective, the Deep Swimmers, the Farsight. Sarah could barely breathe. 9 red lights. 9 species condemning humanity to exile. Red. The crystalline chorus made it 10. Then blue. A single blue light appeared above the Krevtar section. Sarah looked up at Kliktaresh, the insectoid ambassador. His compound eyes reflected the chamber lights like 1,000 tiny stars. His mandibles clicked, and what Sarah had learned was their expression of sadness. Red. The final vote came from the silence, a species that rarely spoke, but whose opinion carried great weight. 11-1. Humanity was exiled. The vote is decided, Velshara said. Humanity will remove all presence from Council space within 10 standard years. All trade agreements are hereby dissolved. All diplomatic channels are closed. All joint ventures are terminated. Humanity will be given a list of systems they must vacate. Any human presence remaining after the deadline will be removed by force. Sarah felt the words hit her like physical blows. Behind her, she heard Admiral Webb take a sharp breath. This was worse than they had feared. Complete exile. Total isolation. This is a mistake, Sarah said. And she was no longer speaking as a diplomat, but as a human being who had just watched her species be cast out into the darkness. You think you are removing a threat, but you are creating one. You think you are protecting yourselves, but you are teaching humanity that we cannot trust you, cannot rely on you, cannot live beside you. What happens when we meet again, and we have learned to survive without you? What happens when the aggressive, dangerous humans you fear have had decades to grow stronger in isolation? If that day comes, Velshara said, the Council will deal with it. But it will not come. Isolated, cut off from trade and technology, humanity will struggle simply to survive. You will learn humility. You will learn that the galaxy is larger than your species, and that you are not as special as you believe. Perhaps in a century or two you will be ready to rejoin us. Perhaps you will have evolved. Or perhaps, Kliktaresh said, speaking for the first time. his words translated from clicks and whistles into standard language. Humanity will evolve beyond us. The Council makes a grave error today. I have worked with humans. I have seen their potential. Fear of what they might become should not blind us to what they are. But my vote is not enough. The decision is made. It is, Velshara agreed. Humanity has 10 years. Use them wisely, Ambassador Chen. This session is concluded. The chamber began to empty. Representatives from the 12 species filed out through doors suited to their biology. Some looked at Sarah with what might have been pity. Most did not look at her at all. Within minutes, the vast chamber was nearly empty. Sarah stood on the glass floor, staring down at the swirling stars beneath her feet. She felt hollow, carved out as if everything inside her had been removed. Behind her, Admiral Webb placed a hand on her shoulder. "We need to go," he said quietly. "Our ship is waiting." "We failed," Sarah whispered. "No," Webb said, and there was steel in his voice. "They failed. They had a chance to make humanity a true partner, and they chose fear instead. Now we go home. We tell our people what happened here, and we prepare. Prepare for what? For whatever comes next." Webb's jaw was set, his eyes hard. "They think exile will break us. They think isolation will make us weak. They are wrong, Sarah. They are very, very wrong. Humans have always done our best work when our backs are against the wall." Sarah looked up at the Admiral, saw the determination in his face, and felt something stir in her chest. Not hope, not yet, but something close. Defiance, anger, the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. 10 years, she said. 10 years, Webb agreed. And then we show them what humans are really capable of. They walked together out of the chamber, leaving behind the glass floor and the floating lights and the empty seats where 12 species had decided humanity's fate. Outside, their ship waited. Beyond that, the long journey home to Earth, where Sarah would have to tell billions of people that they had been cast out, exiled, deemed too dangerous to exist among the galactic community. It would be the hardest speech of her life. But as the ship lifted off from Concordia Prime and jumped into FTL, Sarah began to compose the words in her mind. They would not be words of despair. They would not be words of surrender. They would be words of defiance. Because humanity had been knocked down before, many times throughout their history, and every single time they had gotten back up stronger. The news spread across human space like a shockwave. Within hours of Sarah Chen's return to Earth, every colony, every station, every ship knew the truth. Humanity had been exiled. The Galactic Council, in their wisdom and their fear, had decided that humans were too dangerous to remain in civilized space. The reactions were predictable. Protests erupted on Earth, where crowds gathered outside government buildings demanding action. Some called for war. Others called for submission, arguing that humanity should accept the Council's judgment and change their ways. Most simply felt betrayed. They had believed, truly believed, that humanity had earned their place among the stars. Now that place was being taken away. On the outer colonies, the response was more immediate and more dangerous. Panic buying stripped stores bare within days. The price of food and medicine skyrocketed. These worlds depended on trade with Council species for basic supplies, for technology, for the infrastructure that made life possible on harsh alien worlds. Without that trade, they would struggle to survive. Marcus Webb, now promoted to Supreme Admiral of the United Earth Fleet, watched the chaos unfold from his office in Geneva. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see crowds in the streets below. Their angry voices, a dull roar that penetrated even the soundproofed glass. He had reports streaming across his desk display. Food riots on Jericho Station, a suicide on New Hope Colony, 3 ships lost when their council-made FTL drives failed, and no replacement parts could be obtained. "It is worse than we thought," said Dr. Kenji Yamamoto, sitting across from Webb's desk. The physicist looked exhausted, his eyes red from lack of sleep. He had aged a decade in the 2 months since the Exiled verdict. "Our entire infrastructure is built on Council technology. Their FTL drives, their power systems, their communication networks. We are like children who borrowed tools from adults and never learned to make our own. Then we learn," Webb said flatly. "Fast. Admiral, it is not that simple. Some of these technologies took Council species thousands of years to develop. We have 10 years before they force us out of half our colonies. We cannot possibly— we have to." Webb cut him off, his voice hard. "Because the alternative is extinction. Not immediate maybe, but eventual. Cut off from the galaxy, unable to expand, trapped in our original systems with failing technology, we will slowly die. I will not let that happen. Yamamoto leaned back in his chair, removing his glasses to rub his eyes. What are you proposing? Project Phoenix, Webb said. He tapped his desk and a holographic display sprang to life between them. It showed a complex organizational chart, branching like a tree with thousands of names and departments. I have been working on this since we left Concordia Prime. We mobilize every scientist, every engineer, every brilliant mind humanity has. We divide into teams. One team focuses on FTL drives, another on power generation, another on communications, another on weapons. We share all our research freely. We work around the clock. We pour every resource we have into becoming self-sufficient. The cost will be enormous, Yamamoto said, studying the display. We are talking about rebuilding our entire technological base from scratch. The economic impact will be catastrophic, Webb finished. I know people will suffer. Standards of living will drop. There will be shortages, rationing, hardship, but we will survive. And when we emerge on the other side, we will never again depend on anyone but ourselves. Yamamoto was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I will need access to every database we have. Every piece of council technology we can study. Every theoretical paper ever written on faster-than-light travel. You will have it. I am putting you in charge of the FTL team. You have a blank check. Whatever you need, whoever you need, you get them. When do we start? Now, Webb said. Right now. We have already lost 2 months. The next 5 years would be remembered as the Darkening. It was a time of struggle unlike anything humanity had experienced since the early days of space colonization. As trade with Council species dried up completely, shortages became widespread. Medical supplies ran out on outer worlds, leading to preventable deaths. Food became scarce enough that rationing was imposed across all human territories. Energy brownouts became common as old power plants failed and could not be repaired. People suffered. They suffered badly. The population of some outer colonies dropped by 20% as people fled to more stable worlds. Others simply died when their habitats failed and help could not reach them in time. There were dark moments when it seemed like the Council had been right, that humanity could not survive on their own, that they would collapse into chaos and barbarism. But something else happened too. Something the Council had not anticipated. Humanity got angry. Not the hot, explosive anger that burns fast and dies. The cold, determined anger that settles into your bones and refuses to leave. The anger that says, you think we cannot do this? Watch us. In laboratories across Earth, Mars, Europa, and 100 other worlds, scientists worked through the night and into the morning and through the next night again. They studied Council technology piece by piece, trying to understand the principles behind it. They failed over and over. FTL drives exploded. Fusion reactors melted down. Communication arrays fried themselves. Each failure taught them something. Each disaster brought them one step closer to understanding. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto barely slept during those 5 years. He consumed stimulants to keep working, took drugs to force himself to rest when his body could not continue, then returned to work. He filled thousands of pages with calculations, with theories, with wild ideas that might or might not work. His team called him obsessed. He did not argue. In the 3rd year, he had a breakthrough. Council FTL drives worked by creating a bubble of warped space around a ship, allowing it to move faster than light relative to normal space. But the drives required exotic matter that humanity could not produce, and they had to connect to Council-controlled jump gates to function properly. Without access to those gates, human ships were stranded. Yamamoto's breakthrough was realizing they were thinking about the problem wrong. Instead of trying to copy Council technology, they needed to invent something completely new. His solution involved quantum entanglement on a massive scale, using paired particles to create a connection between 2 points in space. A ship could pull itself along these connections, jumping from point to point without needing gates or exotic matter. The first test nearly destroyed his laboratory. The second test created a hole in space-time that took 3 days to close. The third test worked. A small probe jumped 10,000 kilometers instantaneously. Then they scaled it up. A larger probe jumped to Mars and back. Then a ship made the jump to Proxima Centauri and returned. The celebrations lasted for days. Humanity had its own FTL drive. Not borrowed. not dependent on council infrastructure. Their own. News of the breakthrough spread across human space like fire. For the first time since the exile, people had hope. Other projects began to succeed too. A new type of fusion reactor that was more efficient than anything the council used. Communication systems that did not need relay stations. Manufacturing systems that could build almost anything, given raw materials and energy. In the 4th year, something else happened. Captain Zara Okonkwo, commanding the exploration ship Pathfinder, jumped her ship far beyond the boundaries of known space. She was searching for resources, for anything that might help humanity survive. What she found was something much more valuable. The outer reaches, as they came to be called, were systems beyond the galactic rim. The Council had never explored them, considering them too far from their centers of power. But they were rich beyond imagination. Entire solar systems filled with rare minerals. Gas giants perfect for fuel harvesting. Dozens of habitable worlds with no intelligent life to claim them. Zara's report sent shockwaves through the human government. Here was space for expansion, resources for building, worlds for colonizing, all of it unclaimed, all of it beyond council jurisdiction. "We have a choice," Sarah Chen said to the assembled leaders of humanity. She was older now, her hair more gray than black, her face lined with the stress of the past years. But her voice was strong. "We can huddle in our original systems, maintaining what we have, surviving but not growing. Or we can take the risk. We can expand into the outer reaches. We can build something new, something that does not depend on council permission or council trade. We can become truly independent." The vote was not even close. Humanity chose to expand. The next 3 years saw an explosion of human activity unlike anything in their history. Colony ships poured into the outer reaches by the hundreds. Fast mining operations extracted resources. New cities rose on alien worlds. The population, which had been declining during the darkening, began to grow again as people felt hope for the future. The independent Terran Commonwealth was formed to govern these new territories. It was different from the old Earth government, designed specifically for a humanity that could no longer rely on anyone but itself. Military service became mandatory for 2 years. Education focused on practical skills. Research and development received massive funding. Everything was geared toward one goal: making sure humanity would never again be at the mercy of others. By the 10th year, the deadline for humanity's complete withdrawal from council space, something remarkable had happened. Humanity controlled not 47 worlds, but over 200. Their population had recovered and was growing. Their technology, born from desperate necessity, had surpassed council standards in multiple fields. Their military, built to protect scattered colonies in dangerous space, was the most advanced fighting force humanity had ever created. When the council's deadline arrived, humanity complied. They withdrew from every system within council territory, abandoning stations, bases, and settlements they had spent decades building. But they were not the broken, struggling species the council had expected. They were stronger, angrier, more capable, and they were just getting started. Admiral Webb, now old and gray but still sharp, stood on the observation deck of the ITC Defiant, the new flagship of the Commonwealth fleet. Through the windows he could see dozens of ships in formation, all of them using human-designed technology, all of them crewed by people who had grown up during the exile. The children of the darkening, they called them. A generation that had known nothing but struggle and hardship, and had become stronger for it. "Do you think they are watching?" asked Dr. Yamamoto, standing beside him. The physicist was old too now, his hair white, his hands trembling with the early stages of neurological damage from all the stimulants he had used. But his mind was as sharp as ever. "The council?" "Yes," Webb said. "They are watching. And they are wondering what they created when they exiled us. Perhaps they think we will attack. Get revenge for what they did to us." Webb shook his head. "No, we have no interest in revenge. We are too busy building our future to waste time punishing them for the past. Let them watch. Let them wonder. Let them see what humans can do when you back them into a corner." Yamamoto smiled. "We survived, Marcus. Against all odds, we survived. More than survived," Webb corrected. "We thrived. We proved that humanity does not need the council. We do not need their permission, their trade, their technology, or their approval. We are independent now, truly independent. That is worth all the suffering we endured." They stood together in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, The Council continued their 1,000-year-old civilization unchanged and unchanging. They believed they had removed a threat, solved a problem, protected themselves from dangerous humans. They had no idea what was coming. 30 years had passed since the exile. An entire generation had grown up knowing nothing but the independent Terran Commonwealth. They did not remember the Galactic Council except as a historical footnote, the aliens who had cast humanity out. They had been raised on stories of the darkening, taught to be self-reliant, trained to view the galaxy with suspicion. They were harder than their parents, less trusting, more capable. They were exactly what humanity needed them to be. Chancellor David Torres stood at the window of his office in New Geneva, watching the sunset paint the sky of this young colony world in shades of orange and purple. He was 50 years old, born the year of the exile, and his earliest memories were of food rationing and his mother crying over news of another colony failure. He had grown up angry at the Council, at the aliens who had decided his species was too dangerous to exist among them. That anger had driven him into politics, pushed him to run for Chancellor of the Commonwealth, to lead his people into a future where they would never again be vulnerable. Behind him, the door opened. He did not turn around. He knew who it was from the heavy footsteps. "We have a problem," General Amara Hassan said. She was 60, a veteran of the exile crisis, and she commanded the Commonwealth military with an iron hand. If she said there was a problem, Torres believed her. "Tell me," he said, still watching the sunset. The Krevtar made contact. One of their ships crossed into our space under a flag of truce. "They want to talk." That got Torres's attention. He turned to face her. General Hassan was tall, broad-shouldered, her dark skin marked with scars from her years in combat. She looked worried, which was unusual. Hassan did not worry easily. "The Krevtar voted against our exile," Torres said. "They were the only ones." "What do they want?" "To warn us, apparently. Their ambassador, Kliktarish, is on his way here now. He says he has information we need to hear. He says the Council is facing a threat." Torres felt a surge of satisfaction. "Good. Let them face it alone." "Chancellor," Hassan said carefully, "I think we should hear what he has to say." "Why?" "What do we owe the Council? They exiled us. They cut us off from the galaxy and left us to die. If they are in trouble now, that is their problem." Hassan was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Because knowledge is power. Because we should know what is happening in Council space, even if we choose to do nothing about it. Because the Krevtar were the only species that stood beside us, and that deserves something." Torres sighed. Hassan was right, of course. He let his anger get the better of him sometimes. "Fine, I will meet with the ambassador, but I make no promises." Kliktarish arrived 3 days later. Torres met him in a conference room deep inside the government complex. The Krevtar ambassador was insectoid, his body covered in a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed under the lights. His forearms moved with precise, careful gestures. His compound eyes reflected everything around him like tiny mirrors. "Chancellor Torres," Kliktarish said, his words translated from clicks and whistles by a device around his neck. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I know your people have no love for the Council." "That is putting it mildly," Torres said. He sat across the table from the ambassador, with Hassan standing behind him. "You were the only one who voted against our exile. I have not forgotten that, but you are still part of the Council." "Why are you here?" "Because the Council is dying," Kliktarish said simply. "And I fear they are too proud to admit it." Torres felt a chill run down his spine. "Explain." Kliktarish pulled up a holographic display. It showed a map of the galaxy, with Council space marked in blue. On the far edge, spreading like a dark stain, was red. Lots of red. 3 years ago, we encountered a new species. We call them the Swarm. They are not like other species. They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They consume. They spread. They destroy. Every world they touch is stripped bare of all organic matter. Every species they encounter is either killed or converted into more swarm. The red area on the map was huge, covering what looked like a tenth of the galaxy. Torres stared at it in disbelief. "How is this possible? How did they spread so far so fast?" "Because the Council is weak," Kliktarish said, and Torres heard bitterness in his voice. "For 10,000 years we have maintained peace through the philosophy of eternal peace. We have restricted military development. We have limited weapon research. We have chosen pacifism over preparation. When the swarm came, we were not ready. Our ships could not fight them effectively. Our weapons were inadequate. Our tactics were outdated. They cut through our defenses like they did not exist. How many species have fallen? Hassan asked from behind Torres. 3 so far. The Farsight were the first, then the deep swimmers, most recently the Silence. Billions dead, hundreds of worlds consumed. And the swarm continues to advance. Torres felt a complex mix of emotions, satisfaction that the Council was paying for their arrogance, horror at the scale of the destruction, and something else, something he did not want to name. Responsibility. What does this have to do with us? He asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The Council is losing, Kliktaresh said bluntly. Their fleets cannot stop the swarm. Their technology is insufficient. Their will to fight is weak because they have forgotten how to fight. But humanity has not. The Krevtar have been watching you, Chancellor. We have seen what you built in 30 years. We have seen your ships, your weapons, your tactics. We have seen the fire in your people. If there is any species that can stop the swarm, it is you. Then the Council should have thought of that before they exiled us, Torres said coldly. I agree. The Council made a terrible mistake. They feared your potential for violence and never considered they might need that violence someday. Now they are paying the price. But I am not here on behalf of the Council, Chancellor. I am here on behalf of billions of innocent beings who are about to die. Civilians who had no say in your exile. Children who do not even know what humanity is. They will all die if the swarm is not stopped. Torres was quiet for a long time. Hassan remained still behind him, offering no guidance. This decision was his alone. Why should my people care? He finally asked. We have built our own civilization. We have our own territory. The swarm is far from us. Let the Council fight their own battles. Kliktaresh's mandibles clicked in what Torres had learned was sadness, because the swarm will not stop at Council space. They will keep spreading. They will reach the outer reaches eventually. They will reach your worlds, your children, your future. This is not just the Council's problem, Chancellor. It is everyone's problem. And if we do not stop them now while we still can, there may be no stopping them at all. How long do we have? Hassan asked. 2 years, perhaps 3 before they begin overrunning Council core worlds. 5 years before they start expanding into uncontrolled space. 10 years before they reach the outer reaches. Kliktaresh paused. Of course, that assumes anyone is left to slow them down. If the Council falls completely, the timeline accelerates significantly. Torres stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the city he had helped build. Clean streets. Happy people. Children playing in parks. This was what humanity had created, free from Council oversight. This was their reward for surviving exile. He was being asked to risk it all to save the same aliens who had cast his people out. I need to think about this, he said without turning around. General Hassan will show you to quarters. We will speak again tomorrow. After Kliktaresh left, Hassan remained. Torres could feel her watching him. You are considering it, she said. It was not a question. I am considering what happens if I do nothing, and Kliktaresh is right. If the swarm eventually reaches our space and we could have stopped them earlier, but chose not to. How do I explain that to the families of the dead? And if we help the Council and they betray us again? If we spend lives and resources saving them and they exile us a second time? Torres turned to face her. Then we deal with it. But Hassan, I cannot let billions die out of spite. I cannot be that person. I cannot make humanity into that species. The Council judged us as too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous. If we let them all die when we could have helped, do we not prove them right? Hassan was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. You are right. Damn it, I do not like it, but you are right. What are you going to do? I am going to call a session of Parliament. I am going to present the facts. And I am going to let our representatives decide. This is too big for one person to choose. The debate in Parliament was fierce. Some representatives argued for immediate intervention. Others insisted humanity owed the Council nothing. Still others worried about the cost, the casualties, the risk of weakening themselves by fighting someone else's war. The vote took 3 days. When it was finally tallied, the result was narrow. 312 votes to intervene, 289 against. Humanity would go to war against the swarm, but not on the Council's terms. Send a message to Concordia Prime, Torres ordered. Tell them the independent Terran Commonwealth is aware of the swarm threat. Tell them we are willing to provide military assistance, but not as supplicants, not as a species begging to rejoin their council. as an independent power offering aid to an ally in need. If they want our help, they accept us as equals or they get nothing. The response from the council came within hours. Speaker Velshara herself appeared on the communication screen, her glowing form looking dimmer than Torres remembered. She looked tired, afraid. "Chancellor Torres," she said, "the council has received your offer. We accept your terms. Send your ships, please." That final word, that plea, told Torres everything he needed to know about how desperate the situation was. The proud ancient council was begging humanity for help. "Prepare the fleet," Torres ordered Hassan. "We are going to war." Hassan saluted. "It will take time to mobilize fully. We can have the first wave ready in 2 weeks. Make it 1 week. People are dying." As Hassan left to organize the military deployment, Torres sat alone in his office. He thought about Sarah Chen, the ambassador who had stood before the council 30 years ago and watched humanity be cast out. She was still alive, living in retirement on Earth. He made a note to call her to tell her what was happening. She deserved to know that humanity was returning to council space, not in shame, not in defeat, but as saviors. The irony was not lost on him. The species the council had exiled as too dangerous was now their only hope for survival. Outside his window, ships began to launch into orbit. The great machine of war was starting to move. Humanity was going back to the stars, back to the galaxy that had rejected them, and this time when they arrived it would be on their terms. The first Commonwealth ships emerged from FTL at the edge of council space, like ghosts materializing from darkness. 30 warships, their hulls painted with the blue and white colors of the ITC, their weapon systems already charging. On the bridge of the flagship Victory, Commander Raj Patel watched the tactical display as it populated with data. "Swarm contacts detected," his tactical officer reported. "Estimate 300 vessels in this system. They are converging on the planet Thalaron Prime." Raj had read the reports about Thalaron Prime. It was one of the founding worlds of the Council, home to the Velthari species. 5 billion souls lived on that planet. The swarm had been besieging it for 2 weeks, and the Council's defense fleet had already been destroyed. This was humanity's first real test. "All ships, battle formation Delta," Raj ordered. His voice was calm, controlled. He had trained his entire adult life for this moment. "Target the largest swarm vessels first. Fire on my mark." The swarm ships were unlike anything Raj had seen before. They were not built, but grown. Organic hulls covered in what looked like chitinous armor. Tendrils writhing in space. Weapons that appeared to be living organisms spitting biomatter at targets. They were beautiful in a horrifying way, and they were closing fast. "All weapons ready, Commander," his tactical officer said. "Mark." The space around Thalaron Prime lit up with weapons fire. Commonwealth railguns fired tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds, punching through swarm armor like paper. Plasma cannons superheated targets until they exploded. Missile pods launched smart munitions that hunted down enemies with relentless precision. In the first 30 seconds, 50 swarm vessels were destroyed. But the swarm did not retreat. They did not show fear. They simply adapted. The surviving vessels began to move in more complex patterns, making themselves harder to hit. Their return fire intensified, bioweapons slamming into Commonwealth shields with alarming force. "Shields at 70%, his defensive coordinator called out. "The bioweapons are acidic. They are eating through our shield harmonics. Rotate shield frequencies." "Keep them guessing," Raj ordered. He watched the battle unfold on his display, his mind processing information at lightning speed. The swarm was dangerous, but they followed patterns. They were not intelligent in the way humans understood intelligence. They were more like a hive mind, reacting to threats with programmed responses. If he could predict those responses, he could beat them. "All ships execute maneuver Theta 7, he said. It was a tactic he had developed himself, based on studying what little data existed about swarm combat behavior. The Commonwealth ships split into 3 groups, each moving in a different direction. The swarm, as predicted, split their forces to follow. Now, instead of facing 30 ships as a unified fleet, they were facing 3 groups of 10, each able to concentrate their fire on smaller numbers of enemies. The battle turned. Commonwealth ships tore through swarm vessels with brutal efficiency. Within an hour, the swarm fleet was destroyed. Not a single enemy vessel escaped. "Damage report," Raj requested. 2 ships with moderate damage. No casualties. The Victory is at 58% shield capacity but otherwise operational. Raj allowed himself a small smile. First engagement, complete victory. But he knew this was just the beginning. The swarm would learn from this defeat, adapt their tactics, come back stronger. The real war was just starting. Open a channel to Thalaron Prime, he ordered. The communication screen flickered to life. Velthari appeared, her glowing form pulsing with what Raj recognized as shock. Human ship, she said, her voice trembling. You saved us. We thought we were going to die. We are here to help, Raj said simply. Prepare to receive humanitarian aid. We have medical supplies, food, and engineers to help repair your orbital defenses. But why? The Velthari asked. After what the Council did to your species, why would you help us? Raj thought about that question for a moment. Then he said, because it is the right thing to do, and because we are better than you thought we were. The news of humanity's arrival and their decisive victory at Thalaron Prime spread across Council space like wildfire. Within days, dozens of species were reaching out to the Commonwealth, requesting protection, offering resources, begging for help. Chancellor Torres found himself overwhelmed with diplomatic requests. They want us to defend everything, he told General Hassan, standing in the war room aboard the Commonwealth headquarters station. The holographic display showed Council space, with red markers indicating swarm-controlled systems and blue markers showing Commonwealth fleet positions. We have requests from 47 different worlds. We cannot be everywhere at once. We need to prioritize, Hassan said. She pointed to the display. These 3 systems are strategically vital. If they fall, the swarm gains access to the inner Council territories. We defend these first. The others will have to wait or defend themselves. Some of them will die while they wait. Yes, Hassan said quietly. They will. That is the reality of war, Chancellor. We cannot save everyone. We can only save who we can. Torres hated it, but she was right. He approved the deployment orders, sending Commonwealth fleets to the 3 critical systems. Each battle was won, but the cost was rising. Ships were damaged. Crew members were injured or killed. The swarm was learning, adapting their tactics, becoming harder to fight with each engagement. And then the diplomatic problems began. Speaker Velshara called an emergency council session and requested Torres attend. He agreed, curious about what the council wanted. When he arrived at Concordia Prime, he was shocked by what he saw. The great chamber where he had been exiled 30 years ago was half empty. 3 species were already extinct, their seats vacant. Others had sent no representatives, their civilizations too busy fighting for survival to attend political meetings. Velshara looked older somehow, even though her species did not age the same way humans did. Her light was dimmer, her movements slower. Chancellor Torres, she said, on behalf of the Council, I wish to extend our gratitude for your assistance against the swarm. Your forces have saved countless lives. You have proven yourselves to be valuable allies. Torres heard the hesitation in that last word and knew what was coming. The Council has voted to offer humanity conditional readmission to the Galactic community. Velshara continued. You will be granted observer status initially, with a path to full membership if you agree to certain terms. What terms? Torres asked, though he already knew he would not like the answer. Your military must be placed under Joint Council command during this crisis. You must agree to stop your expansion in the outer reaches. You must accept Council oversight of your weapons development, and you must agree to adopt the philosophy of eternal peace once the swarm is defeated. The chamber was silent. Torres looked around at the remaining Council members, saw hope in some faces, fear in others. They wanted humanity's strength, but were still afraid of humanity's nature. They wanted to control what they could not understand. No, Torres said simply. Velshara's light flickered with surprise. Chancellor, perhaps you do not understand. We are offering to forgive the past, to let humanity rejoin the community you were exiled from. This is a great honor. It is an insult, Torres cut her off. His voice was hard, angry. You want us to fight your war, to die for your worlds, but you still will not accept us as equals. You still want to control us, to change us, to make us into something we are not. The answer is no. We will not place our military under Council command. We will not stop our expansion. We will not give you oversight of our weapons, and we will never adopt a philosophy that leaves us weak and unprepared. Then why are you here? One of the other Council members asked. Gormith the Brawn, who had argued for humanity's exile. If you will not follow our laws, why are you fighting for us? Because billions of innocent people do not deserve to die just because their leaders are fools, Torres said bluntly. We are here to stop the swarm, not to rejoin your council, not to beg for acceptance. We are here because it is the right thing to do, and because the swarm will eventually threaten our space if we do not stop them here. We are fighting for the galaxy, not for you. You are making a mistake, Velshara said. Without council authority, other species will not follow your commands. They will not coordinate with you. You will be fighting alone. Then we will fight alone, Torres said. We have done it before. We survived your exile. We survived the darkening. We built a civilization from nothing while you sat in your comfortable chambers and congratulated yourselves on removing the dangerous humans. If you want our help, you will accept us as we are. As equals, as an independent power, or you will not get our help at all. He stood to leave. Behind him he heard panicked whispers, urgent discussions. Let them panic. He was done negotiating from a position of weakness, but as he reached the exit a voice called out. Wait, Torres turned. The speaker was Zenali, a young representative from a species he did not recognize. She looked humanoid with blue skin and large eyes that seemed to reflect light. I am from Thalaran Prime, she said. My world was the first you saved. I watched your ships fight the swarm. I saw your people risk their lives to protect strangers. You did not ask for payment. You did not demand we change our ways. You simply helped because we needed help. She turned to face the council. My people voted to withdraw from the council and ally directly with humanity. We would rather stand with those who see us as equals than remain with those who see us as subjects. Zenali, you cannot do this, Velshara said. Your species has been part of the council for 3,000 years. And in 3,000 years the council has become complacent, arrogant, and weak, Zenali said. Her voice was strong, defiant. Humanity was exiled for being different, for being strong, for refusing to conform. Now that strength is the only thing standing between us and extinction, I vote to ally with humanity. As do the Krevtar, Kliktaresh said, standing in his section. We voted against the exile 30 years ago. We were right then. We are right now. Humanity deserves our allegiance. One by one, other voices spoke up. Younger species, newer council members, those who had seen humanity fight and been impressed. Within an hour, 6 species had announced their intention to leave the council and form an alliance with the Commonwealth. Torres watched it happen with a mix of satisfaction and concern. This was not what he had planned. He had intended to help defeat the swarm and then return to Commonwealth space, leaving the council to their own affairs. Now he found himself becoming the de facto leader of a new alliance, whether he wanted it or not. The galaxy was changing. Humanity's exile had been meant to remove them from the political equation. Instead, it had created a power that could reshape everything. The war against the swarm continued. With new allies joining the Commonwealth, the battles became easier. Resources flowed more freely. Intelligence was shared. Tactics improved. Slowly, sector by sector, the swarm advance was stopped and then reversed. But the cost was terrible. 23 Commonwealth worlds were damaged by swarm raids. Millions died. Hundreds of ships were lost. Every victory came with a price written in blood and sacrifice. Raj Patel became a legend during those years. The man who never lost a battle. The tactical genius who could predict swarm movements better than anyone else. He fought in 100 engagements, always outnumbered, always victorious. His ship bore scars from dozens of battles. Its hull repaired so many times it was more patched than original metal. After 3 years of relentless warfare, the final swarm nest was located. A massive living structure in deep space, spawning new vessels by the thousands. The Commonwealth assembled its largest fleet ever for the assault. 200 ships carrying the hopes of a dozen species. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the nest was destroyed and the swarm was broken. Without their central hive, the remaining vessels lost coordination, became easy targets. Within months, they were hunted to extinction. The war was won. The galaxy was saved, and humanity stood at the center of it all, no longer exiled, no longer feared but respected and admired. The victory celebration on Earth lasted for a week. Cities across the planet lit up with fireworks, parades filled the streets, and people danced in joy that the war was finally over. But in the government halls of New Geneva, the mood was more somber. Chancellor David Torres sat in his office, reviewing casualty reports and damage assessments. The numbers were staggering. 23 Commonwealth worlds damaged, requiring years of rebuilding. 15 million dead, including soldiers and civilians. 437 ships destroyed. The economic cost was nearly incalculable. Victory had come at a terrible price. There was a knock at his door. "Come in," Torres said without looking up. Sarah Chen entered. She was ancient now, well into her 80s, moving slowly with the help of a walking stick. But her eyes were still sharp, still intelligent. Torres stood immediately, offering her his chair. She waved him off and sat in the visitor's chair instead. "I watched the casualty reports," she said. "I am sorry, David. I know each of those numbers represents someone you sent into battle." "They volunteered," Torres said. "Every one of them. They knew the risks. But it does not make it easier." "No," Sarah agreed. "It never does. But they died for something important. They saved the galaxy. That matters, does it? We saved species that exiled us. We protected worlds that would have happily watched us die. Was it worth it?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do you remember what I told you when you were young? When you said you wanted to punish the Council for what they did to us?" Torres smiled slightly. "You said that becoming cruel to prove we are not cruel makes no sense. That we should be better than they thought we were. And you were. Humanity was. We proved the Council wrong about us, not by destroying them, but by saving them. That is worth more than revenge ever could be." "The Council is dead, you know," Torres said. "Formally dissolved yesterday. 6 species extinct from the swarm. 3 more withdrew to rebuild their civilizations. Only 3 of the original 12 remain, and they have no power anymore. The system that exiled us no longer exists." "Good," Sarah said firmly. "It was a broken system, built on fear and stagnation. The galaxy needs something better." "The galaxy needs a lot of things," Torres said. He pulled up a holographic display showing the state of Council space. It was chaos. Species that had depended on Council infrastructure now found themselves adrift. Trade routes were disrupted. Political structures had collapsed. Entire sectors had no effective government. "We won the war, but we have lost the peace. If we do not help create some kind of order, this chaos will lead to conflicts, maybe even civil wars." "Then create order," Sarah said. "You have the military power. You have the economic strength. You have the respect of dozens of species. Create something new, something better than the Council. A human-led government. That would look like conquest. Not human-led, human-inspired." Sarah leaned forward. "What if you created an organization where membership is not inherited or assumed, but earned? Where species are judged by what they contribute, not by how old their civilization is. Where no one species has absolute power, but decisions are made collectively based on merit and capability." Torres thought about it. It was a radical idea. The Council had been based on ancient hierarchy and tradition. What Sarah was describing would be completely different. Democratic, merit-based, open to change. "It would be hard to implement," he said. "Many species are used to the old ways." "Everything worth doing is hard," Sarah said. "But if you do not do it, someone else will, and they might not build something as fair as you would." Over the next 6 months, Torres worked tirelessly on what would become the Galactic Coalition. He consulted with representatives from dozens of species, incorporating ideas from many different cultures and governmental systems. The result was something unique in galactic history. The coalition would have no permanent seats of power. Instead, representation would be based on contribution to the common good. Species that helped with defense, research, humanitarian aid, or infrastructure development would earn more influence in decision-making. But even the smallest species would have a voice, and all major decisions would require broad consensus, not just the approval of the powerful. There would be no restrictions on technology development, no philosophy that all must follow, no limits on expansion as long as it did not harm others. The coalition would protect its members but not control them. It would facilitate cooperation but not mandate conformity. When Torres presented the proposal to the various species, the response was mixed. Some embraced it immediately, seeing it as a fresh start. Others were skeptical, worried about losing the stability the Council had provided. A few were openly hostile, viewing it as a human power grab. The Velthari, led by Speaker Velshara, were among the skeptics. She requested a private meeting with Torres on neutral ground. They met on Concordia Prime, in the very chamber where humanity had been exiled 3 decades earlier. The room was dusty and dark now, no longer maintained. It felt like visiting a tomb. "You are trying to replace the council," Velshara said. Her light was dim, barely illuminating her form. She had aged greatly during the war, and Torres suspected she did not have many years left. "I am trying to build something better," Torres corrected. "The council failed, Velshara. It failed to protect its members. It failed to adapt to threats. It failed to see value in diversity. We cannot rebuild what was broken. We need to build something new." The council maintained peace for 10,000 years. "It maintained stagnation for 10,000 years, Torres said. "Peace without growth is not peace. It is slow death. The galaxy needs to evolve, to change, to progress. The coalition allows for that." Velshara floated to the window, looking out over the abandoned complex. "I owe you an apology, Chancellor. A personal one. I was the one who pushed hardest for humanity's exile. I believed you were dangerous. I believed you would bring chaos and destruction to our ordered galaxy." "You were right," Torres said quietly. "We did bring chaos and destruction. Just not to you. To the swarm. To anyone who threatens innocent life. That is what you misunderstood. Humanity's capacity for violence is not uncontrolled. It is directed. We fight when we must for what matters. We do not fight simply because we can. I see that now. Too late, but I see it." Velshara turned back to face him. "The Velthari will join your coalition, not because we have a choice, but because you have earned our trust. You saved my people when you had every reason to let us die. That is not something we will forget." Torres felt a weight lift from his shoulders. If the Velthari, who had led the charge for humanity's exile, could accept the coalition, others would follow. They did. Within a year, 47 species had joined the Galactic Coalition. Trade routes were re-established. Infrastructure was rebuilt. The chaos slowly transformed into order, not imposed from above, but grown from cooperation and mutual benefit. Humanity found itself in an unexpected position. They were not the rulers of the galaxy, but they were its leaders. Species looked to the Commonwealth for guidance, for protection, for innovation. It was a responsibility Torres had never wanted, but he accepted it. 5 years after the war ended, a ceremony was held on Earth. Representatives from every coalition species attended. It was the official founding celebration of the new galactic order. Torres stood on a stage in front of millions with the eyes of the galaxy upon him. 35 years ago, he began, humanity was exiled from galactic society. We were judged too dangerous, too different, too unwilling to conform. We were cast out and told we would fail without the Council's guidance. We were expected to collapse, to fade away, to learn humility. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the crowd. Instead, we thrived. We built our own civilization. We developed our own technology. We expanded into new territories. And when the galaxy faced extinction, when the species that exiled us needed help, we came back. Not to conquer. Not to punish. Not to gloat. We came back to save lives because that is what we do. That is who we are. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. The Galactic Council exiled humanity because they feared what we might become. They were right to fear us, but wrong about why. They thought we would become conquerors. Instead, we became liberators. They thought we would bring chaos. Instead, we brought hope. They thought our differences made us dangerous. Instead, our differences made us strong. Torres looked out over the assembled species. Humans stood alongside Velthari, Krevtar next to Braun. Dozens of different forms of life united by common purpose. Today, we established the Galactic Coalition, built on principles very different from the old Council. We do not demand conformity. We celebrate diversity. We do not restrict growth. We encourage innovation. We do not fear change. We embrace it. This is not a human organization, though humanity helped create it. This is a galactic organization, belonging to all species equally. Our strength comes from our differences, our unity from mutual respect. He paused again, gathering his thoughts for the closing. The Council exiled us, thinking we were too dangerous to control. They were right. We are dangerous. Dangerous to stagnation. Dangerous to tyranny. Dangerous to those who would harm the innocent. We are dangerous to anyone who thinks the galaxy should remain unchanged, unchanging, fearful of tomorrow. We are dangerous because we believe in progress, in growth, in the possibility that every species, every individual, can be more than they were yesterday. The crowd erupted in applause, not just humans but aliens of every kind, celebrating the vision Torres had laid out. He stepped back from the podium, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. Later that night, after the celebrations had died down, Torres stood in his private quarters looking out at Earth. Sarah Chen was there with him, along with General Hassan and several others who had been with him from the beginning. "Do you think it will last?" Hassan asked. "The coalition? Or will it eventually become as stagnant as the council?" "Nothing lasts forever," Torres said. "Eventually this too will need to change, to evolve into something new. But that is the point. We built a system that can change, that expects change, that welcomes it. When the coalition has served its purpose, something else will replace it. That is how progress works." "I wish Marcus Webb were here to see this," Sarah said softly. The old admiral had died 3 years earlier, living just long enough to see the war's end. He would have been proud. "He would have told us not to celebrate yet," Hassan said with a slight smile. "He would have been planning for the next threat, the next challenge." "Then we should do the same," Torres said. "The swarm is defeated. The coalition is established. But the galaxy is vast and there are always new challenges. We cannot become complacent. We must keep pushing forward, keep exploring, keep improving. That is what humanity does best." He turned from the window to face his friends and advisors. "Tomorrow I am authorizing a new deep space exploration program. Joint coalition effort. Human ships alongside alien ones pushing into uncharted space. We saved the galaxy. Now let us explore it together." "You are insatiable," Sarah said, but she was smiling. "Humanity never stops, does it?" "Never satisfied with what we have, no," Torres agreed. "We do not. And that is exactly why the Council was wrong about us. They feared our ambition. They should have respected it. Because ambition is not dangerous when paired with compassion. Strength is not dangerous when guided by wisdom. Change is not dangerous when tempered by responsibility. We proved that. We will keep proving it." The next morning, Torres stood before Parliament to deliver his State of the Coalition address. But first, he had something personal to do. He called up a message to be sent to all coalition worlds, to every species, to every individual with access to communications. "This message is for those who remember the exile," he said into the camera. "For those who watched humanity cast out of galactic society. For those who thought we would fail, who thought we would become bitter and vengeful, who thought exile would break us. This is what you taught us, that we did not need your permission to be great, that we did not need your approval to survive, that we did not need your acceptance to thrive. You thought you were punishing us. Instead, you were liberating us. You forced us to become self-reliant, innovative, strong. And when the galaxy needed that strength, we gave it freely, not because we had forgiven you, not because we had forgotten, but because we chose to be better than your fear of us. Thank you for the exile. It made us who we are. It made us who we needed to be." He ended the recording. It would be controversial, he knew. Some would call it arrogant. Others would call it necessary. But it was the truth, and Torres had always believed in speaking truth to power. Outside his window, he could see ships launching into orbit. Human ships and alien ships flying together under the coalition banner, heading out into the unknown, seeking new worlds, new knowledge, new possibilities. Humanity had been exiled by the Galactic Council. Cast out, rejected, deemed too dangerous to exist among civilized species. The Council had thought they were protecting themselves. Instead, they had set humanity free. Free to grow, to evolve, to become something greater than anyone had imagined. And when the galaxy needed saving, humanity had risen to the challenge, not as conquerors, but as heroes. The exile had been meant to end humanity's story. Instead, it had just been the beginning. Now the real story was just starting. The story of a galaxy united not by fear or tradition, but by cooperation and mutual respect. A galaxy where humans and aliens worked together, learned from each other, built something better than either could have achieved alone. Speaker Velshara's final words to Torres before she passed away peacefully in her sleep had been simple. "We feared you because we did not understand you. Now we understand. I am glad I lived long enough to see it." Torres thought about those words as he prepared to address Parliament. Understanding. That was what the Council had lacked. Fear had blinded them to humanity's true nature. But fear had also pushed humanity to reveal that nature to the galaxy. In trying to eliminate a threat, the Council had created a force for good more powerful than they could have imagined. The galaxy had exiled humanity. Humanity had risen higher. And in rising, they had pulled the rest of the galaxy up with them. That was the real victory. Not defeating the swarm, not building the coalition, but proving that different did not mean dangerous, that strength did not mean cruelty, that humanity, for all its flaws and all its history of violence, could be a force for good in the universe. The Council had been wrong. And humanity had spent 3 decades proving it, one action at a time. Now the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity was not the threat the Council had feared. They were the hope the galaxy had needed.